If Congress fails to act by the end of this year, everybody's taxes will automatically go up, including the 98% of Americans who make less than $250,000 a year, and the 97% of small businesses who earn less than $250,000 a year. That doesn't make sense. Our economy can't afford that right now.
President Obama at his first White House news conference since his re-election, addressing the impending fiscal cliff, which kicks in right at the beginning of the new year, which is just over a month away, believe it or not. Can Republicans and Democrats reach a compromise, a consensus, and fix America's problems together? Joining us now to provide a little economic tonic, and tonic is Dr. Peter Morici from the University of Maryland. Dr. Morici, chances are they'll end up doing some kick the can down the road in January. The idea that they're going to have some kind of grand bargain, that's not on. But because of what's going on everywhere else in the world, the Eurozone now officially back in recession, and all of this ideological hornswoggling about how austerity equals growth, aren't we headed for a great big global cliff in the new year?
Oh, absolutely. If you look at what's going to happen in the United States, the likely compromise is the president gets maybe $100 to $150 billion in new taxes annually, and the Republicans get spending cuts that are almost as large. $150 billion on paper, but some of them will be fake. If you carve $250 billion out of the U.S. economy with it growing so slowly, that's enough to cause palpitations. You bring alongside that a Europe that is slipping into recession because of austerity, and if you put them side by side, gee, it's the same policy. Let's cut the deficit in Spain, Italy, Portugal, Greece, and now America to create growth. Do you see any progress? Do you see any progress in the Mediterranean states towards resolving their problems because of austerity? Now, Angela, the Barber of York, has managed to, the medieval Barber of York, let's bleed the patients some more, has managed to convince President Obama and House Republicans the same would be good here.
By the way, what's the evidence? Let's go. You talk about the Barber of York or the Barber of Nuremberg or what have you, Angela Merkel. What is the evidence in her own country? Okay, let's just stay with Germany, okay? Her own backyard. What's the evidence that her kind of austerity has created growth in Deutschland?
Well, it hasn't created a lot of growth. I mean, Deutschland is hardly growing at all. It may already be in recession. What's more, she exports this prescription. This is kind of like, trying out a new drug in Latin America because you don't want to try it out at home. I mean, that sounds awfully gross. But when you think about what she's doing is she's prescribing for Spain and Italy and Portugal economic policies she would never impose within Germany. The whole situation is absurd. I want to see if Germany goes into a recession, is she going to start cutting spending and taxes to lift it out? During the Great Recession, Germany basically spent a lot of money to keep itself from going down the drink.
Okay, now the Germans are fixated. I could be wrong about this. So help me with this. I think the Germans are fixated with the 20s, where you've got the pictures of the old ladies with a wheelbarrow full of money, because money was just about worthless. You had to have a wheelbarrow to get a loaf of bread. Is that what they're focused on right now? That to do it any other way but cut will end up with hyperinflation? Is that the issue?
Well, certainly they're concerned about hyperinflation, but cutting and cutting and cutting is not the way to avoid that. The southern European countries are contracting, and they're becoming less able each day to pay their debts. So paradoxically, that requires the Central Bank of Europe to sustain the Eurozone, to hold it together, to ultimately print euros and buy their debt. Now, it's done some of that on the secondary market, but it's now limited. It's waiting for Spain to sign up for an austerity program before it renews that kind of buying. But, I mean, at the end of the day, austerity drives you into the clutches of the printing press if you're going to sustain the state. And the Eurozone is a very artificial state.
Okay, let's bring it back to your own backyard. Is that what we're looking at in the United States, where growth right now is extremely tepid, where we're on the brink of some sort of austerity program that will give us even less growth, possibly a recession, and then the Fed printing even more money? I mean, is that a preview of coming attractions?
I think it is. Barack Obama talks a lot about how, taxes would be cut for everybody if Congress doesn't act. Well, if Congress doesn't act, taxes will go up for everybody by about $150 billion a year. But yesterday, he was proposing a tax increase on the wealthy and corporations bigger than $150 billion a year. I would like to know why it is that raising taxes for somebody who makes $300,000 a year is a good thing, and cutting taxes for someone who makes $200,000 a year is a good thing. It doesn't make any sense what he's proposing. More likely, they're going to compromise. The fiscal cliff would cause you to lose about $500 billion in purchasing power. Certain recession. The compromise that's coming down the road is about $250 to $300 billion in spending cuts and immediate tax cuts. Immediate tax increases. That would take $300 billion, $250 to $300 billion out of the economy. Still very likely to put you into a recession.
The part of all of this arithmetic, Dr. Morici, that I've never understood is there's always this focus on the government spends too much, the government spends too much. I've said it myself. Okay, the government spends too much. But the central issue here is growth. There is no growth in revenue to the government because there's no growth in the economy. And if you just do the barber of York thing, as you call it, you just kind of keep bleeding the patient in order to grow the economy, well, you're killing the patient, seems to me.
Absolutely. You have to find some other way to jumpstart growth in the West, both in Europe and the United States. And that's by rebalancing trade with Asia. The enormous deficit that the West has with China and other Asian economies and on oil with the Middle East is an enormous drain on demand. And this slows their economies. So they've been compensating over the last decade by running bigger deficits. First by homeowners running deficits, borrowing the money back and spending it. And now by the government's running deficits. It doesn't work unless they do the fundamental things to rekindle growth. And that is in the United States, do something about the entitlements programs, the trade with China, producing more domestic energy, building the Trans-Canadian pipeline, and so forth. All those things, are necessary. And Barack Obama doesn't want to accept that. He just doesn't want to accept it. Instead, he is attached to almost superstition. Why is it that the tax cuts President Bush expiring and raising taxes by $150 billion a year would be cataclysmic, would be terrible for the economy, as he says.
He believes ideologically,
but yet raising them on wealthy people would be good.
Yeah, no, he believes that you get, once again, the barber deal. He believes you can bleed the rich, and you can bleed the rich until the economy grows. It feels like superstition to me. Dr. Morici, thank you so much.
Take care.
Dr. Peter Morici of the University of Maryland.